Hey there, it's Michael Hessian with the Perfect Asset coming to you on a Friday afternoon. At least it's afternoon for me, and to my next LinkedIn Live. So, the title of this one, I'm calling it Stop Losing Money to Bad Advice. And what I mean by that is obviously financial advice. So, there are a couple things that are important to think about. Are you working with the right advisor to guide you on your journey and your financial freedom? That can be divided up into a couple of different sort of basic areas. And what I would say is, on one side, if you really don't want to deal with it and you just want someone to manage your money and grow it, just you'll have to do your due diligence and find someone who's good and has a long reputation, a lot of a track record of success for their clients, because in that world, what we call assets under management, it's really pretty cookie cutter, in my humble opinion. I've even heard financial advisors tell me that just they take money and they put it in some sort of a fund, and they can change up the funds and the allocations and whatnot. So that's one thing, and that's fine if you really don't want to be in control of your money and your wealth, then by all means do that. There are a lot of good ones out there. Just you have to do your due diligence and find the right one. So that's not the area that I reside in. The other side is for people who really want to be in control, more like typically business owners and entrepreneurs and that kind. People who are interested in being in charge and directing how things are going to go. Now, in that world, my world, there's it's important, especially if you're looking at infinite banking and utilizing a certain type of whole life insurance as a wealth vehicle, or life insurance in general as a not just a death benefit, but as a vehicle for wealth building and cash flow and that kind of thing. It's important that you work with the right person on that side of things too. Unfortunately, the best chance you have, honestly, is to work with someone like myself, who is an authorized practitioner through the Nelson Nash Institute. Nelson Nash being the one who created the infinite banking concept. Um, there are, I think, a couple hundred or so in the U.S. and some more in Canada who are authorized practitioners, have come through exams and have learned how to do infinite banking the right way. Now, there are some outliers on that side of things, and some people who I know. One of my first mentors learned directly from Nelson Nash and chose not to become an authorized practitioner. I know a few others, but they're kind of the outliers. What you typically find on the other side is people who will be in the financial realm. They'll learn something about infinite banking and they'll go, "Oh, sure, I can add that to my tool belt," and they'll just it'll be a piece of a bunch of things that they feel like there could be they can offer their clients, which sounds good, except that it's kind of like multitasking to me. You can't be a master at everything. And it's true if you're a financial professional. If you have your hands on all these different things, you really can't be a master at it. Now, what you can do is be a master at something and then have other professionals who are masters in these other sort of related areas that you can direct your clients to. And that's a whole different thing. So just be aware of that. That sometimes you'll run across financial professionals professing to do infinite banking, and what they'll do is they'll try to approximate it, and it can be kind of dangerous because they don't really know what they're doing. They haven't taken the time to really understand what this is all about. So this important distinction there. So are you trusting the wrong person with your money? The difference between just life insurance in general and a real honest to God practitioner is very, very different. So what are some of the other problems along that? I'll talk about a situation I had with a client of mine who had an existing policy. One of the main things is advisors will often say, "Oh, cash value life insurance," and lump it in and just assume that all cash value permanent life insurance is created equally. It's not. And out there, you'll see people pushing these what are called IULs, which are indexed universal life policies. and they can kind of make and sort of dress it up to look like the whole life insurance policies that I use and that my clients incorporate. And they're not the same. They don't have the same guarantees. Their structure is completely different, and they are notorious for falling apart because the way they're designed. So if you, and I've had clients do this, they've told me, oh, I know someone who does infinite banking, and I'll say, okay, that's fine, work with them. But if they start talking about indexed universal life or IULs, call me and head for the hills. Don't do it, because it's not the same thing. If you really want to do infinite banking and become your own banker, there's a certain type of policies that a dozen or so life insurance carriers offer that are all good. They're all a little different, but they're all basically do the same thing. Why not use them? So that's a real problem there. So I had a client who had an existing policy that was an IUL, and it wasn't growing that great. It was tied to growth in the market. It hadn't really grown all that well. His access to the cash value was limited. He could only tap into a certain amount per year. We started working together, and we just did what's called an exchange, because it was completely appropriate to exchange his existing policy into a new whole life infinite banking policy. So that's an example. That's something that you can do. So to keep in mind, if you have something, an existing type of policy that seems kind of sort of like a whole life infinite banking policy, and we find out it's not, there may be some things that you can do. You can exchange it into a more appropriate one. And sometimes those are workable. You can actually work with those. So someone like myself, if you have something that's really appropriate and works, I won't try to change you out of it. We'll just try to work with it and make that one work too. So you have some options. Something else I wanted to just to talk about is how, if you are going to go on the other side where you just rather have someone take care of your money and hope for the best, that's all well and good. I would encourage you to learn a bit more about, at least to some degree, becoming your own banker and having a policy or a system of policies. Still have your, especially if you have qualified money already in place, you've been working for a number of years, you have 401ks that are in the market, they're doing their thing, they're fairly substantial in size. You don't want to pay a big penalty to liquidate it, and you might have some options in that realm too. So there are advisors out there who can keep it in the qualified side of things, so it's still a 401k or self-directed IRA, but you might be able to move it into something more appropriate. And you can also, there are ways to have those stay as qualified plans, but maybe more tied to something like real estate. Or I think there are even like things where you can go into other asset classes like gold. So just something to think about, rather than sort of set it and forget it and have it be the typical where it's tied to the S&P 500 or something like that. You may have some options there, and I certainly have access to some securities focused advisors who can help in that regard. So I'm happy to help in that way too. So those are just some of the main topics. This is going to be kind of a short one today. It's just make sure you're working with someone. Here's another cautionary tale I would say is, you'll hear ads out there from outfits like Fisher Investments, and they have these big marketing budgets, and they'll talk about how you want your money to not be in some sort of vehicle where the professional is being paid in commissions like I am, and rather it's better to have your money in some sort of market related thing where you're paying fees. And every time I hear these ads, it makes me crazy. So they're saying that it's better to have your money at risk with no guarantees and pay a fee regardless of how it performs, as opposed to having your money in something like what I teach and set people up with, where it grows guaranteed. There are no fees. I do get paid a commission, but it's from the life insurance company. It's not out of their pocket. It gets factored into the whole thing, but it's not coming out of their pocket. And there are no fees and there are no penalties. So just be aware of some of those ads out there. It's nonsense. And they'll talk about even the fiduciary status. The fiduciary was created coming out of 2008, and it was a product of the SEC and Wall Street, who they're largely responsible, not the SEC, but Wall Street and their sort of greed and doing these mortgage-backed securities that got a lot of people in trouble because they were able to make a buck on it, so they offered it out there. So they got a little slap on the wrist after 2008. He said, well, we better create this thing called a fiduciary, which you get some accreditation and you promise to do right by the client. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a designation. So just because someone is a fiduciary, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to do right by you. So just be aware of stuff like that. It's that gets created to try to cover up for past sins, in my opinion, and that's one of them. So I'm going to close it out here. Just if you have to really feel like you want to work with an advisor, go for it. Do your due diligence, and don't just go for one of those cookie cutter organizations that are out there, because they're cookie cutter, most of them. And then on the other side of things, if you really want to be in charge, be the captain of your own financial ship, work with someone like myself or another authorized practitioner of infinite banking to really understand how that works and how you can just, there's so many attributes to having your money flow through these whole life insurance policies that go way beyond just rates of return and, making money. It's intergenerational wealth. There's long-term care components built into these policies, all kinds of stuff. So I'll end it for now. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and remember, your money, your rules. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.